Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. Today we're going to be talking about asbestos management surveys. What are they?
I'm glad you asked, Ian. So, an asbestos management survey. What is it? The definition. An asbestos management survey, as the name suggests, is a survey that you would have done if you're looking to manage asbestos within your property. It's a non-intrusive. When I say non-intrusive, it does cause a slight bit of damage to the building. However, it's not significant, or it shouldn't be significant, but it does depend on what you're actually planning and the end result you want from the survey. And what I mean by that is it shouldn't actually make holes or destroy any elements of the building. However, it will have slight damage where any suspect materials and samples being collected from those areas, but they should be made good and safe by the surveyor who's collecting the samples.
Yeah, I mean, the management surveys, when we generally undertake them, we access everywhere a maintenance person would go. So if you think about risers that can be unscrewed, ceiling voids within suspended ceilings, so we'd take tiles out, our surveyors would inspect within those voids, those kind of things, but nothing majorly intrusive. Like Neil said, we're not going to put holes in walls to survey it as part of the management survey.
No. I would expect the surveyor to lift up carpet tiles, though,
to
check what's underneath. But if it was a fixed down carpet or lino vinyl tiles, I wouldn't expect them to be lifted because they'd be damaged by doing that process.
Yeah, and things like in hospitals when you've got the fully sealed marley flooring or lino flooring that goes up the wall as well, same as like shower rooms, walk-in shower rooms, we wouldn't be damaging or going beneath those because then that damages the actual main point of the floor and the use of the floor.
Yeah, you'd expect them to open up cupboards, especially sort of like kitchen cupboards where they're built-in cupboards. And as Ian said, riser panels, which can be unscrewed without damaging it, definitely looking in there because that's a sort of location where you'd expect a maintenance person to go.
Yeah, and when you say cupboards and stuff as well, it's things like in some of the older properties that had old coal chutes, things like that, rather than cupboards where you keep your beans stored.
Yeah. Lofts, definitely getting
lofts.
into lofts because generally speaking they can have asbestos materials in there, but yeah, definitely lofts, sort of confined spaces like that generally would be getting into.
Yeah, so I mean that kind of covers literally where and how to a certain point. When can we carry them out? When do we generally carry them out?
Generally speaking, they can be carried out during normal occupancy. Sometimes that can place a bit of a restriction on the surveyor. Ideally, if it isn't unoccupied, that does make it hell of a lot easier for a surveyor to get round. They can basically get uninterrupted access to everywhere. But like I said, they can be done in occupied buildings. We just have to work around the occupants depending on what's happening within the type of building that it is.
Yeah, and also when we have got occupants in there, we'll have to consider things such as sampling and when we're going to carry that out. So we might inspect an area, but then come back at lunchtime when the people in the office have left for lunch or at the end of the day or something like that. But that would be agreed on our kind of initial walk around. But yeah, I mean, we survey pretty much any type of building, any type of structure. If you think about offices, warehouses, houses, ships, submarines, factories, walk-through ducts.
Yeah, basically any type of structure. You know, we've done lots of different ones over the years, even offshore structures.
Lighthouses, stuff in the middle of farmers' fields, you name it, we've surveyed it.
Yeah.
So what happens in a survey generally? How should we go about doing the survey?
Well, generally speaking, before we even step foot on site, the surveyor, a desktop study would be undertaken. Now, the desktop study will basically gather as much information as possible about the site.
That sounds like a really complex thing, a desktop study.
Yeah, it sounds quite technical, but basically it's just gathering information on the age of the building, what type of building it is, We like to look at plans, don't we?
Yeah.
If available. Plans are probably the best and key element for us to gather, because one, it saves the surveyor time in drawing them and they're a little bit more accurate. And also it gives us an idea to plan the survey initially as well.
And then historical information, if a client's got anything historic, be that an old report, old plans, any construction information, whatever they've got really.
Yeah, it just helps the surveyor plan the risks, so what type of asbestos materials are likely to come across during the survey themselves, and that sort of helps them develop the actual risk assessment for the survey.
Yeah, and on that one, the risk one, it's always great when we speak to clients before we go to their site, if they can let us know of the risks they already know they've got on site, such as, I don't know, they've got a chemical store that can't be accessed unless you've got full PPE, RPE. There's vehicle movements, things like that on site. Anything like that we can take into consideration if we need to plan or do anything outside the normal realms of a survey. That's kind of...
Yeah, like garages, have pits, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Any sort of, like Ian said, out of the normal risks associated with the building itself.
So go on then, talk me through how you do a survey. If everything goes according to plan and everything's lovely, what's it look like overall?
Yeah, so the surveyor, following on from the desktop study, would be going pre-armed with what to expect at the site. But when the surveyor gets there, after introducing themselves to the occupants, to the site manager, what they tend to do with that site manager is have a walk through the site. So the surveyor would walk through the site to determine a few things really. So they can put together any associated risk assessments. They can have a look at the overall layout to confirm whether it is the same as the plans that they've got. And they can have a look at and talk with the site manager the order of the survey, because that's quite important, especially if it is occupied. What rooms can we get in at certain times? So that can be planned on this initial walkthrough. They'd also look for any sort of suspect items. So again, they can add that to their planning, and maybe that needs to be carried out with the sampling regime.
And just on that one, whilst they're walking through and having discussions, a lot of the time, as surveyors, we glean information from the people on site that we haven't found in the desktop study. There's sites where a caretaker's worked for the last 25 years. They've not sent through any information about any asbestos or any asbestos works they've had done previously. But then when we're walking through the site, they mention to us, go, oh, well, actually, I'm pretty sure we had asbestos in this boiler room, but we had some guys in about 20 years ago, and they say, you won't find anything in there. That's quite a common kind of theme of people giving us those little snippets.
Yeah, and definitely this walkthrough really does sort of highlight to the actual site manager, because when we get there and we say we need to get into everywhere, during the walkthrough, we come to a room which is locked, and they always say, do you need to get in there? And it's like, yes, we do. So it just gives them an opportunity to get keys or arrange access, etc., right at the start of the survey, instead of leaving it to the end and you can't get in everywhere. So yeah, it's really important. Walkthrough is golden, really.
Yeah, definitely.
So first job then, what would we do on the management survey, Ian?
A cup of tea. The first job we generally do is, so after we've done the walkthrough, we know the layout. Now is the perfect time to either draw the plans from scratch if we haven't got plans provided by the client, or just go through and check the plans, because even if we are provided with them, don't take them as verbatim. A lot of the times plans are given to us and walls have moved, offices have changed, things have changed. So again, it's great to start with that base of the plan being 100% correct. So even if we have got plans, we'd have a look around the site, make sure they are fit for purpose. If not, make the amendments. And then when we've done that, then we can basically start the survey. And the way we would survey is we wouldn't go all over the show. We wouldn't run around the site to any of the areas where we've thought we've seen asbestos as we've gone through. It needs to be carried out in a methodical manner, room by room, area by area, location by location. Really kind of, like I say, slow, methodical, top down or bottom up, depends on how you survey. I mean, I personally survey top down. So if I went into a room and there's a ceiling void above suspended ceilings, I would inspect within the ceiling void first, the ceiling itself, then the walls, any columns, any panels, and then finally the floor. And if I can lift the carpet, what's beneath the carpet or anything like that.
Yeah, it would also include any items within the room as well. So stuff that we'd look at is filing cabinets or safes, anything that we could suspect may contain asbestos within the actual room itself.
In social housing and private housing surveys, things like ironing boards come up
now
and again, where Mrs. Smith has had the same ironing board for the last 50 years and it's stood the test of time, but they sometimes have cement or insulating board panels on where you keep the iron stored. So it's those kind of things that we're keeping our eyes open for.
Yes, once the surveyors visually inspected the room, they would have identified if there are any suspect materials within there, and then they would collect those samples. Now, collecting the samples generally has to be done in an unoccupied area. So if it was in an office scenario, we'd actually need to do that while the occupants were moved out. And timing of that is quite important to minimise the disturbance to the site.
I mean, generally speaking, we're only talking a couple of minutes for most samples to be collected. And there's kind of a different sampling strategy depending on what we're sampling. So sampling pipe insulation would take a lot longer because we have to core bore the entire pipe. We have to set the area up by laying polythene beneath it. We'd don our mask. We would spray the material down, all of those kind of things. Whereas if it was in say an office where it's got vinyl tiles on the floor, we would wet the sample down, but we wouldn't be getting out the polythene and all the rest of it. So it kind of does vary in time, but we're talking no more than a few minutes. It's not going to take like 20 minutes, 30 minutes to take a sample.
No, it can be literally, we could ask the occupants, could you give us 5 minutes to leave the room or we'll take a sample? That's really the maximum sort of disturbance.
For management surveys, depending on the complexity and the size of the site, depends on whether we'd carry them out just as individuals or as teams, team of 2 surveyors. Anything that's larger or more complex, we would always carry out in pairs. So 2 qualified, experienced surveyors would go and survey. Generally speaking, one of the surveyors would be leading the survey. They would be the one relaying the information to the other surveyor so they can input the information onto the tablet.
Yeah, so they'd be doing the looking and the sampling and marking on the plans.
Yes.
The other one would be doing the data collection and recording the information. But you would expect both of them to be sort of having a check and having a look as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they would both be surveying, and a good team that works together always does check each other's work, because by human nature, people make mistakes. Whereas when you've got 2 really experienced surveyors on site, both checking each other's work, you're going to get a better overall product at the end of it. And that's how you really should be working together.
Yeah, so you'd expect the lead surveyor to be looking, inspecting, and there'd be a communication. So the lead surveyor would be communicating what items he could see within the ceiling void and what the walls were, what the floor structure was, and any sort of suspect materials in there. He'd be relaying that information back to the second, and then the second would record that on their database and then have a look for themselves as well, just to confirm that that is accurate.
Just one other thing on sampling. We don't always just sample stuff to prove that it's asbestos. We sample stuff to prove that it's not asbestos. Job stoppers, we like to call them.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of materials out there that look like asbestos materials. And generally speaking, it can only be identified and 100% confirmed in the lab. And what I mean by job stoppers are when 3 o'clock on a Friday or lunchtime on a Friday.
It's always a Friday.
It's always a Friday. There's a construction job on. They need to take a wall down, but all of a sudden the guys on site take a massive interest in whether it's asbestos or not and ask the question. And if it's not sampled within the report, then categorically speaking, you can't say whether it's asbestos or not.
Yeah. Correctly speaking, you have to presume it's asbestos unless you've got evidence it's not. So that's a key thing to remember as well. And if it's not in the survey report, you don't know whether it is or not.
Exactly. So we would sample modern insulating boards known as Superlux, glass fibre boards, plasterboard even, triple MF tiles, all these things that can be sometimes misconstrued for asbestos. If we feel we need to prove this to the site occupants, then we do sample those as well.
Yeah.
All right, so say we've done the survey, best survey in the world, and we found some stuff on site. Talk me through how you kind of finish up and complete that survey.
Yeah, so once the surveyor has completed the survey, so they've inspected all areas, got into everywhere, they've collected all their samples. Generally speaking, what they'd do is they'd go through and check all their data to make sure it's accurate. But most importantly, if there was any sort of urgent issues that have been identified during the survey, the surveyor should have a conversation with the site manager just to relay their initial findings. Now, these are initial findings because we don't 100% know if the materials contain asbestos until those samples have been taken back to our lab, analysed and confirmed for the presence of asbestos fibre within those samples.
Yeah, I mean, with experience and stuff, some samples and some materials you can look at and kind of near as damn it say that it is asbestos.
Yeah, materials such as like the pipe insulations, the insulating boards, the sort of high risk materials, generally the surveyor will have a good indication of whether they are or not. Items such as vinyl tiles, texture coatings.
Yeah, that can be a lot more difficult.
They can be a lot more difficult to confirm
make that
visually,
judgment.
visually
Exactly.
on site whether they are or not.
But yeah, that is the perfect time to walk through any potential areas, just to give the site the heads up of, I don't know, there's something in a boiler room. Look, if you can, for the next few days until you get your report, don't go in there because I believe this might be asbestos. That kind of thing. Just trying to warn people at the earliest stage.
And not just real hazards, but it's just any sort of heads up as well. You know, I'd like the surveyor to go through the site manager and just give them an overview of what sort of suspect materials they've actually sampled, just to give them, because there is a bit of a time period between the actual site completion of the survey through to them getting the report. So any information that we can provide them, subject to analysis, is always good for the actual duty holder to manage.
Yeah, and also at that point, what we would do as well is, if there were any no access areas, we would just get them signed off by the client. So we would confirm that, look, your caretaker tried to get us into this room. He hasn't got the key. Apparently so-and-so's got the key, but they're on holiday. We need you to sign off the fact that we can't get in there.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
That's a really important part of it, because we don't want to leave site going back to the client at the end of the day saying we haven't been able to get in here without telling them initially, because they might be able to sort of force that while we're still there. So they might be able to get on the phone and go, right, we need to get in here now, let's get the key to site, etc. So there's no surprises on when the report comes through that we haven't got into everywhere.
Yeah, because the issue with that of not getting in somewhere is it has to be presumed that asbestos is in that area because it's not been inspected. So that's the big thing. If we can't get into an area, so it has to be listed as no access, it's then listed as suspected to contain asbestos, which obviously isn't great.
The surveyor at the end of the day wants to complete 100% of the property, so the help that they can to do that, then it's a better result for everyone.
Yeah. So after that, the surveyor would then send the data back from site. The way that our guys do it, we use iPads and they're connected to 4G, and we push the data back via secure, whatever it is. It's like HTTPS, I don't know what it is, but it gets pushed back to the secure server. So the information goes back to the lab.
Straight into the lab. So that data is ready, sat there for when the samples get dropped off, and then we can start analysing those samples.
Yeah, and then once the samples are analysed, the report's produced, the plans are drawn, any asbestos materials are marked on, and it's all marked on there, so that survey report has got the full information.
Yeah, if there's any no access areas, that would also be mapped onto the plan, so it's really user friendly, that it can see where the asbestos is and where the areas that hadn't been accessed during the survey. And generally speaking, that process, that reporting process, shouldn't take any longer than 5 working days.
No, not for a normal run-of-the-mill management survey. I mean, if it's a huge site, then yeah, it might take 6 days or a bit longer. But generally speaking, all of our stuff goes out well within 5 days. So.
Yeah. Okay, so that's asbestos management surveys. I hope you found that useful. And that's it from us.
Yeah, if you've got any questions or you want to know any more information, have a look on Facebook, become part of the Asbestos Knowledge Empire, and finally, remember, asbestos first, not last.